開心翻啦 Eugene 嚟到上環咧，可以揾到啲配件整翻你支銀簪。
上環呢一度咧，北渠啊係工藝品同古玩嘅集中地啊。雖然咧我有好多支簪，不過始終咧最中意呢一支，因為係我第一次上台表演嘅時候咧，媽咪送俾我戴㗎，所以特別有紀念價值，一定要整翻。
我覺得咧藏品咧就唔可以淨係用金錢去衡量嘅，藏品咧同埋收藏者之間嘅聯繫咧，先最值得人哋細味啊！
你又講得啱啊！就喺前面啫嘛，有間家族經營嘅私人博物館亮衣藏，佢哋主要咧就係收藏中式家具同埋歐洲珠寶化妝盒㗎。嗱，每一件藏品咧都盛載住同藏主之間嘅回憶同埋感情，特別有人情味㗎。呢一點咧，亦都係私人博物館同公營博物館之間最大嘅分別。
Liang Museum is basically named after my sister and I. So as you know, Liang Museum is a family-run and private museum which was started because of my father's collection of antiques. So when he was coming up with a name to think of for the museum, he decided to name it after my sister and I. So in our Chinese names, the middle character is Yi, so it became Liang Yi. Hello, my name is Lin Feng and I'm the director of Liang Yi Museum. My father is the collector who started the permanent collections of our museum. He started by collecting classical Chinese antique furniture in the late 70s, so over 40 years ago. We only, out of, I think, 400 pieces of furniture, we only have 10 reunited sets or pairs. It's actually a 4-piece cabinet, so it comes in 4 different parts, 2 larger ones at the bottom and then 2 boxes on top. But, if you're familiar with Ming furniture, you would know that there's something unusual, which is that Ming furniture tends to be very simplistic in style. They really prized, the elegance of keeping things very simple. So to have a Ming Dynasty cabinet with such ornate ornamentation is very unusual. I guess you could say one of the signature pieces of our museum. So Ming Dynasty furniture is probably the more popular type. Ming furniture, you could say, is usually made with Huanghuali wood, which is the wood that, actually right here, so you can see it's sort of like a warm golden tone, and there's a lot of natural grain patterns that people have always traditionally prized about it. You might get, a few motifs like these, but overall, the lines are very simple. And the reason I say that it's more popular with people nowadays is because it's easier to accept sort of in a modern home. And also, how Danish furniture is very popular at the moment. The Danish chairs were mostly inspired by the Ming Dynasty horseshoe chair. So a lot of people find it easy to integrate Chinese Ming furniture with modern mid-century or Danish furniture into one space. By the Qing Dynasty, especially after the Emperor Qianlong, they really just loved carving dragons on everything. A lot of dragons everywhere. To us now, it just seems over the top. So it's, that's why I would say people can appreciate it for the craftsmanship or the skill. I would say that would be the primary difference between Ming and Qing Dynasty furniture. For the Chinese furniture, those were pieces that, as my father started collecting, they were for home use. So we had them around the house, we had beds, we had desks, a lot of footstools and a lot of chairs. So that collection is probably the one that I'm most familiar with. And I remember that was a poster bed that my sister used to sleep in when we were teenagers. And I remember we actually really disliked it because my sister had a thing for watching horror movies about ghosts in particular. So we were just terrified of this bed. And then when my sister was the one who had it in her room. And then when she went off to boarding school, sometimes I would have friends sleep over and we would sleep in that bed. And I mean, it's memorable because I basically would never fall asleep because I was so terrified of, basically all the history behind the bed. Just through the furniture and the objects, it really tells a whole story of, I think, a people, a culture, society. So I would say that the collection to me means more than just objects.
嗱喺晾衣床呢一度咧，隨時見到任何一樣嘢咧，都分分鐘係個寶物嚟㗎。例如呢一個咧，唔好以為係普通嘅展示櫃，呢一個嘅黃花梨鐵力木書櫃咧，其實係產自18世紀清朝嘅時候，都有翻咁上下歷史㗎啦。不過咧就唔使太緊張嘅，因為晾衣床佢哋咧亦都好鼓勵大家咧親身去接觸下每一件嘅家具，甚至坐低慢慢感受佢哋帶俾你嘅歷史感覺。
When we first opened the museum, I suggested to my father about this idea of open displays, and he was a little bit more cautious. He also asked his friends, and they didn't think it was a good idea because of the reasons that you mentioned, that there are dangers, there's security risks, etc. But my way of thinking was that, first of all, these are furniture pieces, so they're meant to be used by people. I would say because we're a privately run museum and the collection is our own, we can afford to be more experimental in how we display things. Maybe take a big smell of the wood, see why it smells like that. You would not be able to do that in public museum. So I would say this sense of, this sense of fun, this sense of personalized experience is something that makes us really quite different. As he collected more and more furniture, he also expanded into other collections such as vanities, European silver. So right now we're in our vanities gallery. So as part of this exhibition, we have a collection of our European vanity cases, which also includes smoking utensils. They are very small cases. You put all your necessary things into this tiny, tiny box and you go out with it. And it can only fit in, maybe a tiny ivory notepad, a very small lipstick. One cigarette lighter, and that was it. There was no space for, you didn't need house keys because if you're of a certain class, you have servants, so you don't bring house keys. So up until, I believe, the early 1910s, only, basically actresses or prostitutes would smoke in public. Upper class women would never smoke in public. That all changed with the dawn of the 1920s, with the jazz age, and then it became quite fashionable and perfectly acceptable, which is when all of these vanity cases also became made, and that's why they were made with things like cigarette lighters inside. So, for me as a woman, it also kind of denotes this wonderful new sense of freedom, of women being able to do the same fun things as men. These vanity cases basically fell out of fashion in about the 1960s, as you end up getting bigger cosmetic houses making things like compacts and makeup being sort of more commercially made and disposable. So there was no longer any need for a compact box that's made out of gold. So you can see, again, that's how society changes, how culture changes.